Right. How do you do this? Hello, welcome back. It is episode 7 of my knitting podcast. My name is Becky. You're so welcome here. I haven't sat and filmed for a while. I was going to rewatch episode 6 just to remind myself what I talked about, but I think it does no good to look back. It distracts from the now. So we're just going to plow ahead, and if I repeat myself, call it consolidation rather than repetition. I have this new condition called cold all the time. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may be fellow sufferers. But if you are a sufferer, like I am, then know that you are seen, that you are appreciated, that I empathise with you, and we're all cold together all the time together. I have a couple of things to show you. We're obviously going to start with finished objects, and none of the finished objects I'm going to show you are garments. None of them are actually even knitting, so you're going to really have to bear with me on this one. But trust me, we're going to get to some good stuff later on. I've got some really satisfying updates and some whips. But as is tradition, let's launch straight into finished objects. And the first one that I want to show you is actually quite exciting, or I think it's exciting. So brace yourselves. Are you ready for a whole dose of cute? Because here he is. I asked people what they thought I was crocheting last time that I was working on Winnie, and everybody correctly guessed that it was Winnie the Pooh. So congratulations, all of you, for being just observant, finger on the pulse sorts of people. You really are at the cutting edge of culture, if you understand this. I can't tell you how pleased I am with how he's turned out. I mean, just look at him. Just look at that boy. Oh. So he's obviously crochet, and I used cotton, I think it was a combination of like Paintbox Yarns, but just common cotton DK yarn. And there's this beautiful kind of mustardy yellow for his body, and then this bright red for his little top, his little crop top. I am so proud of some elements of this. I'm going to walk through some bits of it, but he has little safety eyes, as you can tell. He has this little smile. And the original pattern said to kind of crochet a little nose for him and then sew that on. And I thought that actually looked terrible. Like, I did try it, but I didn't think it looked good. So I have embroidered and just stitched black yarn to make this little nose. One of the bits that I'm most pleased with out of the whole thing is that he has a little brow bone, so you might be able to tell. But just here, you can see he has like a little indentation right above his eyebrows, so that he looks like he's going like, in case you didn't catch that, he's going like. His arms and legs are obviously mobile, so you can do a little jig. You can do a little wave. Oh, I literally just think he's the cutest. Probably caused some mic damage there. I think he's so sweet. This is going to be a present for my friends who have recently just had a little baby, and I've made this and I kind of think it's a little bit grown up for a baby. Obviously, they're not really going to fully appreciate it, so I don't mind that I haven't yet given it to them before birth of said baby. But I think it's the sort of thing, when I was born, my mum's friend had embroidered or cross-stitched a Peter Rabbit frame, and I still have that somewhere. So I think it's the sort of thing that you kind of get when you're born, and hopefully people like to keep it for a lot of their lives because it's something to commemorate their actual birth. Anyway, I think he's really well made. I'm really proud of myself. I kind of want to keep him. Obviously I won't. I'm not going to deprive a baby of a toy. That would be some Disney supervillain style stuff. But I'm tempted. I'm tempted nonetheless. Anyway, he's going to sit and I think, be our friend for the rest of the podcast. So please make him feel welcome. I've got 2 other finished objects, and neither of them, as I say, neither of them are knitted, and these are a little bit more sketch. So I'm going to show them up on screen, and then we're going to have a bit of a laugh about them together. But I keep getting, like, every year, I would say, I get gifts of sort of random fibre adjacent things that you could make. And people are like, oh, Becky's crafty. She will want this kit of stuff that she's going to want to make. And I appreciate gifts. And a lot of the time, this is right, that I will want to make it. And sometimes I do make it. But they are often not knitting. And anybody who's watching this, you'll probably be the same as me, which is that you have a massive long list of stuff that you want to make, not enough time, and knitting might be your main craft. So you're like, why would I take any time away from knitting that I could be spent making something? So I made these 2 things, and I've had these kits for absolutely ages, and I'm quite pleased with one of them, but the other one is really funny to me. We're just out of, I think we're still in the tail end of like autumnal season. Definitely in the UK, I can feel winter is coming, but I still think it's appropriate to show these and hopefully still a little bit exciting. So here we go. They are 2 pumpkins. This one is needle felted, and then the other one is macrame. And yeah, brace yourself. I think it does look like a pumpkin. It looks more true to pumpkin than she does. Let me give you a bit more of a close-up. So this one, as I say, is I think needle felted. So you have like a big block of white felted wool, and you shape it into this sort of pumpkin-y shape, and then you like needle point in the color of it. And it was supposed to be like, it's a grey pumpkin, which I find super strange, super odd for it to be like a grey pumpkin. I also gave it these, like, I like when my pumpkins are a little bit witchy and have these sort of bubbles, and they're like pumpkin warts, you know. They just seem a little bit more like witchy to me. So I was very happy with that. And it's really satisfying to do needle felting. I find it really stress relieving. I don't know what that says about me. Well, I do know what it says. It says I have a lot of stress to relieve. But anyway, that was really fun to make. It took like an evening to make this, and I enjoyed it a lot. So highly recommend that as an alternative craft if you're looking to break things up. To be fair, actually, I think it's really useful to have alternative crafts like this that you know that you enjoy, because I get a lot of wrist pain and I get a lot of shoulder pain as well. And it's not that the knitting causes it, but it definitely doesn't make it better. So when I have that sort of pain, it's useful to have something else that I can do that still feels like creative, that I can do whilst watching TV or like listening to music or whatever else. And it doesn't feel like you're just kind of like stalling and doing nothing. So recommend needle felting. 10 out of 10 craft, would do again. Maybe have done in the past. I think in the past I have needle felted very chunky wool yarn where I didn't want to tie a knot, undo the knot, and then weave in ends. Because when you have like very, very chunky yarn like that, obviously weaving in ends is very, very visible. So I would recommend doing that as an alternative if you're making like a really chunky project at any point, and it's made out of wool, then you can use a needle felting needle and like a sponge underneath to just like merge the fibers of 2 balls of yarn together so that you don't have to do any ends like that. So I think that actually looks quite nice, and I think obviously if you get more practice at it, I'm sure you can make it look neater and neater, but it's still, to me, even with like a little bit of fraying, a little bit of kind of bobbliness of the ply of yarn. I don't know quite what I'm saying there, but I think you can probably get the idea that obviously where that join comes, you can tell it's not the same as the uniform thickness of the rest of the big noodle. So you can see it, but I think it looks better than if you weave in ends for super chunky yarn. So I have done that in the past, but this is my first ever proper needlepoint project. Sorry, it's not needlepoint, it's needle felting. I think they are 2 different things. So this is the first time I've ever done something like that. Really quick, really fun, really enjoy it. Might start using old scraps of ends and so on to make other needlepoint projects in the future. Something to think about, much to consider. This boy, right, wait, hang on. I'm going to see if I can find the box and show you what it's supposed to look like, because you will die. That is what it's supposed to look like. Let's do this side by side. Supposed to look like this. Looks like this. I don't rate it. I did not rate it. So it is macrame, meaning that you have these ropes that you kind of use your fingers to just weave around itself. And the instructions for it, and then obviously the outcome, gives me that feeling of like nobody has actually ever read or done this pattern the way that it's been described. So that's a little bit disappointing. I kind of, despite myself, love it. It's so like distorted. Again, I think it actually looks like a real gourd. These little stringy bits at the top, I think I should cut those a little bit smaller. Again, fun way to spend some time. So macrame, apart from getting all of the ropes and stuff mixed up, I would say 6 out of 10 craft. Might do again. Might do again. So there you go. Those are all my finished objects, and not a single knitted project in sight. So now we get onto the good stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of my whips. Have some tea first. I have actually got a very high number of whips right now, and I think quite a few of them are ones that I've shown here before, and some of them have been giving me such grief. I have barely touched them since last time I showed them, but we're going to have a look at them anyway. I think I will go for the Lanark first, because I haven't shown Lanark in a little bit, and there has been some good progress on Lanark. So just as a recap, I cast on the Lanark sweater by Creabea as a New Year's treat to myself. So New Year's of this year, the year of our Lord, 2025, I cast on Lanark sweater. And I have been working on it solidly since then. There has been sagas much recounted, much bemoaned by me regarding this sweater. And the latest bit of it was that I'd knit up the cuffs and also the bottom ribbing in a totally different colour from the main one. I have since then taken off the hem, and if you want to see me mess that up, I've got a knit and chat on my channel that you can go back and have a look at and watch me ruin it in real time. I fixed all of that though. That was actually fine. Sorted it all out. And I have also done one of the cuffs, but I wanted to show you it because I wanted to see if you could see the difference and why I've done this. So it's inside out right now. It's half fisherman's rib. So the recommendation was to knit it inside out. But here it is. So there you go, like full sweater. up at the top, this is the facing, which is where, when the zipper comes in, the facing will go on the other side of the zipper, so that you have zipper underneath the outside and then facing to kind of hold it in place and stop it from being too irritable on the skin. I'm going to show you the cuffs. So there they both are. Answers on a postcard, but I think you can tell, hopefully you can tell which one's done in the right colour and which one's done in the wrong colour. I'll give you a countdown of 3 seconds to get your answers in. 3, 2, 1. Ding, ding, ding. This one is the one that still needs to be done. So that's in the sort of old blue. In real life, it's a slightly less stark, I think, than on the camera. And I was actually happy to live with it until I realised that I had just a ball of yarn that actually matched the main body. And then I realised I knew that I had to go back and change it. So that's all that I need to do on Lanark now, is to take that cuff back, reknit it. Then I think she will be ready for final stages, and that's weaving in ends, blocking, and doing the zipper. I've never done a zipper on a garment before, so I'm looking forward to that. If anyone has any tips for how they've done zippers, I'd love to hear it. I do know some people who have done it and they have always stitched it by hand, which I think I'm going to do. I don't trust myself to put this in a sewing machine, and I don't think it's necessary. I think it'll be absolutely fine to hand stitch a zipper in. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think at this point, I feel like I deserve it. I feel like I deserve this. I deserve this jumper. I worked so hard. I think I deserve it. The one thing that I am kind of thinking about is whether I weave in all of the ends before I go and block it. And I think I've probably posed this question before. I definitely have put something out on Instagram saying, how do people do it? And I think the answer is it kind of depends on garment by garment what feels right. But the question is, do you weave in your ends before or after you block your garment? And in the past, I always blocked, then woven ends. And the reason for that is I thought that if you wove in the end beforehand and then blocked it, you might end up slightly kind of puckering your garment where the ends were woven in, because it might, a string of your yarn might react a bit differently to a swatch of the fabric of the yarn. I don't know if that's true, and there's kind of a reverse argument for it, I think, which is that if you don't weave in your ends, then you will actually pucker your garment when you weave them in post-blocking, and nobody's going to block, then weave, then block, right? That would be absurd. That would be wild. So tell me what you do. I think with this one, I am erring on the side of block, then weave, and that is purely, I am quite lazy. I want this to be blocked so that I can look at it, and truly, I might never properly weave in the ends for this, because it's not going to fall apart. That's probably bad girl behavior, you know? That's not good girl moves. That's a bit rogue of me. I just want to be wearing it. I just want to be wearing it. Who can begrudge me that? I don't want to come to the end of December and not have this. I'm a good person. I deserve it. So anyway, there you go. Lanark update. That reminds me, whilst I'm talking about Lanark, which is obviously, this is a Creabea design, and I haven't talked about what I'm wearing right now, which is, the sweater that needs no introduction. It's obviously the Cargill sweater. It's also a Creabea design. This one, I made this ages and ages ago. It was probably one of the first things that I was posting about on Instagram, and it was probably one of the first patterns that I saw as part of the online Instagram knitting culture. Obviously it went viral. It was very popular. It probably is still very, very popular for good reason, I think. This is hands down one of my favourite sweaters that I've ever made. It's quite precious to me because it is made in Knitting for Olive, merino and mohair held together. And I think I knit it in the wrong size or on the wrong needles, and then had to take back like the whole yoke and then redo it again. So I worked really hard on it. And it also cost a lot in terms of the yarn, because obviously you're spending on like 2 balls of yarn. Cost a lot of sanity and it cost a lot of money. And it's so squishy, and I feel like it really is perfect. It's held up so well, this yarn. It has barely pilled at all. I keep it housed in a bed of roses. Not really, but I wouldn't put it past me. That's how much I love this jumper. Let's talk about Whipwise. Another one that I have shown before, and it's the socks for my dad, the never-ending socks for my dad. Showed you this one last time, and this is the one that my sister made. The story with this, just to recap, is that we've made them for my dad doing a half Ironman, which he completed in June. So that's the Ironman symbol on the sock. And me and my sister were going to make a sock each and then give them to him as a present. Mine, I knitted and it would not go over my foot at all. My foot, let alone his foot. So I had to take it basically all the way back. I took it back to the cuff. I kept the cuff, that was fine. And then started re-knitting it. So I'll show you where it's at right now. This is also inside out. I have been on like a little bit of a journey with this, in the sense that I still couldn't quite get my tension right doing this colour work to feel confident that it would stretch enough to go over a grown man's foot. I was looking up all these different tips of ways to sort out your colour work tension, and particularly to sort out your colour work tension on socks. And I tried loads of different things. I was probably catching my floats too often in the previous one, and then I started catching my floats maximum every once over 9 stitches, and anything under maybe 5 stitches I wouldn't catch. And I still found that wasn't, it was still like the float was still too short across the other stitches. At least when I was catching it, there was like a little bit of give, but it just meant that there was more slack that was then getting caught. I'm doing a horrendous job of describing this, but maybe you'll understand what I mean. The length of the thread over the back of those 5 stitches when I was catching once in 5 was longer, but it was just, it wouldn't stretch out. Whereas when I was doing it without catching at all over the course of 5 stitches, it was actually shorter, but it was easier to stretch because it didn't have the additional friction of being in the float. Hopefully that makes sense. Either way was not really working. But the only thing that I have found, I think, that does give enough stretch, so here it is inside out, has been to knit it inside out. So if anyone is kind of struggling with their colour work tension, let me show you a little bit. But I am able to properly stretch that out a bit more now. Whereas before, it was just like, that wouldn't have happened. I am still a little bit worried about this. That's why I haven't been very enthusiastic with it, with continuing on with it. My kind of internal deadline is that I will get this done by Christmas, so at least you can get them over Christmas. And given that socks as thick as this are not really good summer wear anyway. To be honest, maybe that's fine. Maybe it's a bit more timely. I'll give him a proper Christmas present as well, obviously. I'm not just like doubling up on Christmas presents and previous unmade presents. That would be rude. But I therefore have maybe like half a month to try and finish it off, see if it'll fit. I'll use my boyfriend as like a test subject to see if he can get it over his ankle, and then we'll see if it's worth gifting it. But it has knocked me on the floor a little bit. I've done colour work before. Like I've done colour work, many different colour work projects, like cowls and tops and other jumpers, and even I've done intarsia. So I'm not like a stranger to either stranded colour work or to intarsia. But this was the first time that I did colour work socks, and it has surprised me how much thinking about it I needed to do and how unnaturally it came to me. And I'm hoping that with this like inside out, I've found my formula to getting tension right on colourwork socks, because it would be really nice to make loads of different fun floral, and there's some like really cool mushroom socks that I saw, and I was going to make some Halloween socks, and then I didn't get my act together to do that. But I want to do all of those things, so I don't want to be sitting and doing something that feels really unnatural. I want to get into the flow of making them and really enjoy doing them. And what's really annoying to me is that I felt like I was on a really good roll with socks and knitting socks, and this has kind of knocked my confidence a little bit and set me back. But once I finish this sock, I'm going to cast on a single colour sock for myself, just to enjoy it again a little bit. And then I'll come back to the colour work thing. And if anyone else has like been on a journey with colour work socks, I would really like to hear how you touched on a formula that worked for you, and whether you love it, and whether you would do anything differently from the things that I've tried. My tea has actually got cold, so I'm just going to make another cup of tea. You hold on right there. I won't even be a second. See? Just a second. I think it was on Instagram. I had a picture that I posted of a whip that I had and a cup of tea, and it had this in it, which is like a tea strainer. And somebody responded being like, "Why have you got a stitch holder in your tea?" Actually, no, I had like 2 or 3 people say that to me. I was like, this is typical of knitting Instagram, isn't it? That people see that and automatically think that's a stitch holder. Made me chuckle. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to talk about, I haven't talked about on the channel before, but I haven't been working on in ages. So this is a crochet top. Oh my god, it's in such a state. It is in such a state. It's going to start unraveling as I hold it up as well. So this is the Calad Shirt by Jessica Tsung. I have talked about this pattern before because it's been one that I've been talking about for ages that I've really wanted to make. I'm going to just show you what it looks like currently. So it is a crochet shirt. The way that you make it is that it's made from left to right and then right to left, and then you seam the 2 panels down the back, and then the front is buttons, and then you go and do little short sleeves off once you've, I think, seamed up to the underarm. So this would be either the left or the right as like a shirt panel. So actually I'm a bit, looking at it on the screen, I'm a bit more pleased with it, but this has been such a nightmare, truly such a nightmare. The yarn is lace weight, and I'm using a cotton yarn that I got in Japan. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I will put it down below in details of how I got it in case anybody wants to try and find it. I think to start, I had to chain over 200 loops to start. And then there's this kind of repeating pattern of single crochet, triple crochet, single crochet, triple. And then there's the lighter colored bit here is like obviously a kind of lace crochet design made up of chains and so on, which I think is quite attractive. It's quite nice. But starting off doing that 200 chain and then coming back into that chain to kick it off knocked me on the floor. It knocked me out for a count. I was so fed up with it. I can't tell you how little I enjoyed it. And then making progress on it, because it's such fine weight yarn, and the hook that I'm using, see if I can find it here. I can't remember off the top of my head. This might be it. Yeah, the hook that I'm using is a 2.5mm crochet hook. This is savage as a project. This is absolutely savage. I took it, originally I thought I might have it to go on holiday at the end of September. So I was taking it to Greece and I thought, how cool will this be? I'm going to be wearing my hand crocheted shirt on the beach in Greece. I'm going to be so sick. Love it so much. I obviously didn't finish it on the way. Obviously didn't finish it on the trip either, but like that's the whole thing. When I was on the plane, I was like, I wonder if I'm going to get this done over the course of this week. That would be really cool. And then quickly realized that I was making such little headway, hour by hour, day by day. I was making barely any headway at all. And I'm clearly, like, I'm not as good at crochet as I am. I'm not as experienced at crochet as I am at knitting. But the one problem that I've always had with crochet, I'm sure this is like quite relatable, especially for people who started knitting and then went to crochet second, is that I always end up with like the wrong number of stitches at the end, and then in some cases I'll go back and fix it, and then in some cases, like in this one, I do a bit of a hack job and just crochet back into the same loop at the end, and then probably end up with this like wibbly jiggy jaggy edge. For this, I was like, look, I can sort it, and worst case scenario, I'll do maybe like a single crochet around the bottom just to make it look a little bit more even, or I'll do something else. I'll like do some aggressive blocking and hopefully it'll then look like something I can live with, because I'm not going back on 200 stitches and trying to figure it out every single time. But pretty much like every row in this, that was happening. It was so depressing. And one thing I find about knitting is that there obviously is a lot of counting. I tend to count when the pattern prompts me to. So like, you know, after you've done a section of increases or after you've done a section of decreases, and then it says you should have this number of stitches. If the pattern tells me you should have this number of stitches, I always check that. So that's how often I count when I'm knitting. And, you know, probably if you counted more often, you'd have fewer problems. Less problems than I do. But I can't bring myself to count that much, especially if I'm on a million stitch project. With crochet, the concept to me that I had to at least now, I have to count pretty much every row because I'm not adept enough yet at reading the work to say you've missed that bit or you've missed that bit. I'm not confident enough in my ability to read it to know whether I've missed it or not. And I just don't want to end up with like a triangular garment, which can happen if you're obviously like missing stitches every round. And I just wore myself thin on this project. On that trip to Greece, I brought this lace weight crochet shirt, and I brought the book Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. Like, people were sitting around the pool with, like, you know, their very readable kind of trash novels, and we're playing card games and, you know, like having a drink and like relaxing and sunbathing. And then I was getting rinsed for bringing two insanely difficult activities. Both of them felt the same, okay? Almost impenetrably complex. And not a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun. But I did finish Blood Meridian, but I did not finish the Calad Shirt. So I'm playing a bit of a mind game of frog or finish with this one. I have this feeling that, you know, I might fall in love with it in a little bit again. I might kind of put it away for now, update my Ravelry with where I've got to and anything I can remember off the top of my head about the project, and then see if I can, you know, pick it back up again in the future. It's not going to get worn in the short term, is it? Because, I mean, just look at the weather. Just look. So if I finish it in the next like couple of weeks, which obviously I'm not going to do, it's not going to get worn until next year. So I don't feel that bad about putting it into hibernation for a little bit and building up my strength again to look at it. Probably building up my crochet competence. It feels like quite a complex project to have taken on as like a relative newbie to that craft, all things considered. It's a shame. I really wanted it for this summer. I've fallen in love with it a little bit again after having shown it to you. So maybe one day I will go for it. And I actually don't think it's as bad, the jaggedy edge, as it was in my memory. I think it's definitely fixable via blocking. So yeah. The one thing is, as I said, because it's 2 panels, and because I just complained so much about the concept of doing that 200 chain to start, I have to do that again to get the other side. And when I read that in the pattern, I freaked out, guys. I freaked out. It's like, they can't do this to me. They can't do this to me. But they can. And they are me. I am doing this to me. All right. I have one other whip to show you. And the reason that I've done it in this order, talking about Lanark, talking about Iron Man sock, talking about the Calad shirt, where each one of those has been, it's given me some friction, you know. I've not been in love with some of my whips recently. And I was sitting there thinking, oh God, I don't want to knit. I don't want to make something. And that's because each one of these just seemed like a whole task in and of itself. And then, using my own free will, I was like, who said that I have to work on anything that I currently have? So I impulse cast on something new. Hang on, just while I'm talking about this, I'm going to get this to like a satisfying point where it's a bit easier to show you what it is and what it's all about. This is made out of some yarn that I got from my boyfriend's mum. She gave it to me as a kind of hand-me-down, but also as part of my birthday gift this year. And I have shown this, I think, on my last episode. So that was like an acquisition I had from this year. It is, I don't think it's actually showing up as the right colour on the camera, but I think it's quite a gorgeous like teal colour. It's quite rich. It's, for a bluey green, I would say it's quite a warm bluey green, and I tend towards warmer colours generally. This is, what's it made out of? Made in Italy, it says. Oh, it's right on the front. It's 70% lamb's wool, 26% kid mohair, and 4% nylon. And so the reason why she gave it to me was she said she didn't feel like it would be a nice thing to have direct to skin. And I kind of agree with that. I know that some people have issues with mohair. I don't personally have an issue with mohair. As I said, what I'm wearing right now is held with one strand of mohair. So I don't personally have an issue with it. I don't find it very itchy or like have any sensory issues. Listen, tea, that's some good stuff. That is some good stuff. Side note, but I heard that if you live in a country where tea came by like an ocean route, then you tend to call it something like tea or te, or I don't know. Yeah, it's like a T sort of sound. Whereas if you had tea come to your country via land, then you tend to call it something like chai, or some other examples. But that is a general rule, of which I'm sure there are exceptions, to what the name for tea is in the language of a certain country. I thought was very interesting. That's very interesting. I was talking about mohair, and as I said, I don't have a problem with mohair. I do know that some people find it really difficult, but I think this yarn, I did kind of agree with my partner's mum that it would be probably quite rough to have like too much on the skin. And my verdict with this was not a turtleneck, obviously, not a cowl, not a scarf, not a hat. I've got too much of it anyway. I wanted to make an actual, like a garment with it. So I landed on cardigan. I'm gonna make a cardigan. I have in the past made a cardigan, knitted a cardigan. I made it for my mum, and if I can get a good picture, I'll put it up on the screen. I remember that cardigan was made out of crochet yarn, and it was recycled plastic bottles that the yarn was made out of, which I love. It had these absolutely beautiful buttons with thistles on them, just really, really nice. They were such a good find. And as soon as me and mum saw them, we knew that it had to be those ones. So I made that cardigan. It was like a fingering weight cardigan. It took quite a long time to make, and I was really pleased with it towards the end. I have also crocheted myself a cardigan. I did a made to measure test knit for, her handle is Jewel Makes. So I made that last year, but I have never knit myself a cardigan. And I never really thought of myself as like a cardigan girly, if I'm honest. Never really had one. So I thought this would be a really good chance to make something like that. So I landed on the Moss Path cardigan, which I believe was published in Lina magazine. I spent a bit of time thinking about what sort of cardigan I wanted, because I didn't want a chunky cardigan. There are loads of kind of open waterfall style cardigans. I think those look quite dated. I can say that. I think they look quite like early 2000s to me. And I didn't want like too high neck a cardigan, because I think that's probably looks a little bit schoolgirly to me. It reminds me of like my school cardigans. And also I think it doesn't look great when you've got a slightly bigger bust, which is my burden and my curse. So I knew it was going to be like a nice v-necky cardigan. I wanted it to have like maybe 2 or 3 buttons, so not like a big, you know, like very tightly buttoned up one. And again, that's because of like the slightly bigger bust, is that it just tends to have that sort of gape. And then, you know, if you have like any curves at all, then I think you end up with a bit of a gape there, unless it's super well made. Which obviously, if I was going to make if I'm making a cardigan, like, it's going to be super well made. Like, don't get me wrong. So I landed on this one. I did ideally want one which had pockets, but I think it wouldn't be like too hard to make a pocket and then sew a pocket on if I decided that I wanted to do that. I think I'd feel fairly confident in doing this. The Moss Path cardigan, I will eventually show you my actual whip, but the Moss Path cardigan has a like quite deep rib at the bottom, which I liked. Again, I don't like a thin skinny rib at the bottom. It just doesn't do it for me. I like a big, thick, deep rib. So it had all the design features that I was looking for in a cardigan. The one issue is that it was for like DK weight yarn, and this yarn is like an Aran weight. So I just dropped down the needle size fairly substantially. I think it's like a 5.5 millimeter, and then I did a gauge swatch. I'll show you that now. This is my gauge swatch. So I did that in 3.5 millimeter, and it was maybe like a tiny bit of a stretch. So I've taken a bit of a gamble and have done it on 3.75 just to make it a little bit more airy. But I was happy with like the drape of this. I was more worried with this yarn and with this needle size that going down that much would make it really kind of like stiff or far too chunky and not have very much like drape to it. But I'm actually really happy with this as it is, so much so that I think if I had done a DK weight yarn on bigger needles, I might have not been particularly happy with that. That might not have like been the sort of thing that I'm after, whereas this really is. So fingers crossed, my slight gamble doesn't mean that I'm miles off in terms of size, but I think I should be good because it had quite a range of positive ease. I think it was like 2 inches, 2-3 inches of a gap of positive ease, and I went for a slightly smaller amount of positive ease if I was following the size and the bust size that correspond to me and what I'm doing. So if it is slightly bigger, then I'm still within that kind of margin of positive ease that was on the pictures that I like the look of. So that, I think I should be okay. Obviously this is a stockinette cardigan, and it's obviously all flat. I know some people have some thoughts about stockinette knit flat, and I'm not going to give weight to those thoughts. If you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to justify or corroborate the view that is widely perpetuated about stockinette knit flat. But I will say that every single time I pick up this project, it's on a purl row that I need to finish off. So I'm always abandoning it on the purl row. So if you know the view, you know, take that as you will. Right. Finally, here we go. This is where I've got to. It's on like quite a short cable, so that's why it's a bit bunched up. But maybe I'll show you the back of it. But there's a fairly substantial amount that has been knit. It started off from the collar, I think. Yeah, so from the back at the collar, and then you knit the back section, and then you pick up a left and a right front for those panels. I quite like my pickup here. I think that looks quite nice. The nice shoulder seam. I'm pleased with it. And I only just the other day got to the point where I joined under the underarms, having made both front panels. I'm really pleased with how it looks so far. I think I love the colour. I'm really liking the kind of halo of it, and I'm really pleased with how I've done so far. All I need to do is to finish off the body, and then I'll obviously come back and do the sleeves. My sort of standard thing that I tend to do when knitting something like this is that I will connect under the underarm, like get to working in the round in the body, and then I will finish off whatever ball of yarn I'm on until that is the length that it is, and then I will go back and do the sleeves. So I don't have like a ball of yarn kind of trailing around for the body. I'll just finish that off, and then I'll go back and do both sleeves. And then if I'm doing a sweater, I'll tend to then do the collar as well, because I think that just makes it look nicer. And also, one thing that I have found is that if you do the collar, I think it changes the lay of the jumper such that the decision that you might make about length is slightly different. So when you're trying it on, I think it's better to have the collar in place most of the time. With this, I will probably do the same. So I'll finish off this like final little scrap of yarn, and then I might go back and pick up for one of the sleeves and do that. And then sometimes I get a bit bored of that and then do like another ball of yarn in the body, and then go back and do the other sleeve. Like, you know, I kind of play around the pattern a lot, and it has bitten me in the past. But I think now that I know like the sort of standard formula for most garments, it's pretty low risk. So anyway, that was my dopamine cast on, feel good, like fall in love with knitting again project, and it has worked. I feel really pleased about it. I'm really excited to have it. I've got so many buttons that I can choose from to make this cardigan. I did like a big clear out. We painted our spare room recently, and then moved everything out and then moved everything back in. And I've been quite good about organising all my knitting stuff, but I've been really poor about organising sewing stuff. So I found loads of boxes that had pretty buttons that I'd bought in the past, and I've now consolidated all of those. So I'm going to have hopefully a really good rifle round and check of all the buttons that I own, so that I can make some good choices. And if you're interested in like seeing which ones I choose, I will probably put that on Instagram and like put that as a poll and see what other people do. Most of the time when I put a poll up on Instagram being like, what would you do? Would you like use this button or this button? I actually tend not to go with what people say. Like, I'm still interested in what people say. It's not like I don't do it for any other reason, but I think it makes me like very secure in what I know I want, and sometimes that's a bit different from what other people want, and that's totally fine. That's okay as well. But how exciting! My first ever knitted cardigan for myself. I always say this, I'm always like, oh, this is the first time I'm ever doing this. And I made this jumper earlier on this year. It was like a green jumper. And I said that, I was like, oh, my first ever green jumper. And my sister was like, what about literally your Cargill? I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about the Cargill. How could I forget about the Cargill? Right, looking round, I think that's it for works in progress. Surprisingly more to talk about than I thought I would have to talk about this episode, so there's that. One thing I haven't talked about is something that I really want to cast on, which is, I think the pattern that everybody is making right now is the sailor slippers by Annie Sews. I too covet some sailor slippers. I must have them, and I've been thinking about very little else. I will probably cast some of those on like in the next week or so. I think everyone's making them for Christmas gifts as well, which, yeah, I'm into that. And I can think of a few people that I want to make a pair for. I have in the past done Christmas gifts, like knitted Christmas gifts, and most of the time it has been more hassle than it's worth. This year I might do like one or two, but I'm going to try not to make that a whole thing. I really am going to try not to make that a whole thing. So I'm just going to see how much I enjoy making these sailor slippers before I commit to making like 5 or 6 pairs for everybody that I know and love. And I also got it in my head that it was made out of DK weight yarn, that was what you used. But I was looking at it the other day and it's actually super bulky yarn, which I have a lot less just random odds and ends and scraps of that I can play about with colour. So that's kind of changed my view of it a little bit. I could still obviously use DK weight yarn held double. I think DK held double largely would get you to the right gauge, but it just changes it a little bit, doesn't it? If you're like, now I'm thinking about what do I have enough of? It's just different. And I also was probably fine with using slightly more like expensive precious yarn for the sailor slippers if it was just held single and not very much, and then it's fine. They're just slightly bougie slippers. But now the idea of like holding it double, maybe it's not the end of, like, if you have a skein of yarn, what do you like tend to make with that if it's DK weight? Like, it's kind of not enough for anything, or you're always going to end up with like a little bit of a scrap left over. Maybe you can make like a really nice hat, actually. Maybe I should be thinking about that, like a really nice hat out of DK weight super special yarn. Maybe that's the thing. Anyway, next time I speak to you all, I expect to have a pair of sailor slippers on needles. I am thinking that this year I am probably going to do Vlogmas, which, for those of you who don't know, is like a vlog for the season of Christmas. So it would start in December. I'm going to probably keep it quite low key, and I'm not going to hold myself to any like rigorous posting schedule around it, but that is my dream. So I expect to be knitting on those during the Vlogmas season, and I'm excited to show you progress that I make on that. And it's also partly out of, as I said, I've kind of lost a bit of love for knitting, but it's like, again, trying to get back into the rhythm of knitting or crafting every single day, because it makes me feel happy, and when I feel happy, like, that's it. When I feel happy, the world is all good. So we'll do that. Oh, just before, okay, I've got like a couple more things that I'm going to finish up on, and I do have some acquisitions, even though I'm on my yarn ban, which is kind of a dangerous new psychological loophole that I've gotten myself into, which is that in the same way that it's okay to buy clothes secondhand, it's also okay to buy yarn secondhand, even though the point of the yarn ban is not necessarily a point about consumption. It's more about, I have too much, more than I can ever use in a given lifetime, and I keep getting more of it. But I couldn't resist this because it was on Vinted, and this is Zakami yarn. I've been keeping it in the box because it makes me feel fancy. And also I really like using my nail like a letter opener to be like, moving back the tissue. A lot of fun. This is like a fade set. So it's 3 skeins of DK merino. Yeah, 100% fine merino, DK weight. And I saw this. Some person was selling it for £40 overall. So I bought it. I bought 3 skeins of yarn for £40. And I think like hand-dyed yarn like that, you would expect probably to pay, or I would expect maybe to pay like £75 at most for. So that's 35 off. I think it's a steal. I'm like so pleased with it. I would normally put secondhand yarn straight in the freezer. It seems totally fine. There's no issue with it at all. I probably will still put it in the freezer. My vision for what I'm going to make with it, and I think this is probably possible, I might be like slightly short on yarn, maybe like 50 meters short on yarn, but within a reasonable amount that I can kind of adjust the pattern. What I thought I might make with that is an Alex hood. This is like a gateway balaclava, in my personal opinion. People will know my thoughts on the Sophie scarf, which I will not reiterate. I'm not going to bash it, but when the Sophie hood came out, I was like, and then this pattern I think is kind of similar, where it's another sort of hood thing with like a scarfy wraparound thing. I have no idea whether it's going to suit me. But I covet it. I covet it so much, and I think it would be quite cool to have a fade set doing that, where it starts with that lighter color, goes through like the medium-y pink up on the top of the hood, and then comes down to like a darker color for the other end of the wraparound. So I think that would look quite cool, and I think the only thing about it is I believe that it's knit from like tip to middle and then seamed, so that might be a little bit complex in terms of getting that fade right. But if you've got a fade set, in my personal opinion, you should actually use it as a fade set. I originally thought about doing a Look at My Holes James Watts top, but that didn't need as much yarn as I've got, so I wouldn't get like the full fade effect, and I might just have little scraps. Whereas I think the Alex hood would use all of that and potentially look really good. So I'm excited about that as a potential. That's another fun thing that's on my to knit list. We'll see if I actually achieve. See if I start to cast that on over December. That's the plan anyway for that. Cool. Acquisitions. Done. The last section of the podcast. When I first started, I said I would use a sort of tiny final segment to talk about stuff that I'm repairing or mending or just reusing in some way, like previous things that I've knitted or things that I'm like making some changes to. So I want to give like a little shout out to myself for fixing my winter coat, which I have another long video on my channel about, and it took me maybe 8 months to do. When I did my first ever episode, I think I fixed like a pair of my boyfriend's gloves. I'd done some invisible mending on it, and then I think I did talk about fixing this winter coat in some other podcasts, but never really focused on it. It felt like it would deserved its own space and deserved its own kind of project spotlight vlog. So that's what I've done. With doing videos like that, they're never the most popular ones that I put out, but they're always the ones that I enjoy making the most. And I think of this channel and like kind of content creation in general, that sometimes there's an approach of like, you do one for the meal and you do one for the chef. And this project spotlight video was one for the chef. It was one that I wanted to do and which I really enjoyed, which I'm really proud of. I'm really proud of the video, and I'm also really proud of the project. And what I will do is put like maybe a little video up on the side, which is what it looked like at the end. And if you're interested in the kind of journey and what I did around visible mending, sewing, waxing the coat, then I will also put a link to the video just in case you do want to have a look at that. Because I finished that coat project, I kind of have it in my head that I want to do another sort of fixing project. And the thing that came to mind first is to fix my zap cap, which is a knitted hat that I made. The pattern is by Park Williams, and I'll put a picture up on the screen of what it looks like. But sadly, last year it was moth damaged. Given that it's a little bit colder now, I want to bring it back out of hibernation and then just have a look at it. But that will be the next thing that I fix off. So with that, I will close down the video there. Lots of updates, not a lot of progress on some of them, but like quite a whirlwind, I think, this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, I would love it if you dropped me a comment and told me what you were working on or had any thoughts about anything that I've said in the video. I'd love to hear them. If you would like to view my other videos, then you know where to go. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd love to welcome you to the fold. And apart from that, you know, stay safe out there, guys. Don't fall foul of the condition of always cold. It's a real thing. It affects 9 in 10 UK adults. Bye.